All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Jay Deppeler. Jay, welcome. So awesome to have you on the call today.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a great honor to be with you today.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. You and I have been getting to know each other a little bit. In fact, I ended up having you on a roundtable, a virtual roundtable last week. Usually we end up doing the podcast interview before I have you on a roundtable, but just in this instance, it worked the other way around. And I will tell you, I'm still on cloud nine after that roundtable last week. And so that was a phenomenal experience. And
It was
so
an incredible experience for me as well. The others in the roundtable, I've learned a lot from them, and we have begun to connect after that experience. In fact, as serendipity would have it, one of those participants texted me moments before we started this podcast. So I'm looking forward to connecting with him.
that's awesome. And of course, that's what it's all about is relationships with the right people. And boy, I'll tell you what, when we got that, man, we can make a substantial impact when we're connected with just the right people who get us, who get our vision and just want to be able to support us in that. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what comes from those follow-up conversations for sure. Well, I'll tell you, I want to start off by just giving a shout out to Ryan Dewey Smith because Ryan was the one to introduce you and I, and that is like the absolute best way to meet somebody new is through an introduction from somebody that you've already got a great relationship with, that you already just have so much respect and admiration for, because you just know that it's just gonna be good. you know
For
and
sure.
yeah, and of course, that's what this podcast is all about, is valuable relationships. And so what we'll do is we're just going to get in, we're going to have a heart-to-heart conversation today. And I'll just start by asking a really simple question to start with. Jay, what do you do and who do you serve?
So I currently am a senior executive vice president and the chief development officer for Imperium,
Okay.
based out of Reading, Pennsylvania. And Imperium is a nonprofit supporting organization that strengthens health and human service organizations. Their mission, their identity, their independence stays theirs while they gain scale and infrastructure to do more with every dollar, every leader, and every community they touch. It's an inspirational model, I believe. It's a revolutionary model that really helps sustainability for nonprofits in the health and human service space and helps deepen their impact. So excited to share a little bit about that, my experience with my organization, and how I came to become aware of the concept in and of itself.
Yeah. So what inspires you most, Jay, about the work that you get to do and the impact you get to make?
So when I got involved in the health and human service space, working with kids that were in the juvenile justice and child welfare system back
Okay.
between my junior and senior years of college, where I was a psychology major and a philosophy minor, and I worked at this organization in the Allentown area, where there were four different units, seven rooms with three kids in each of the units. So if my math is correct now, 84 kids because they were at 100% capacity. And
Okay.
those kids, really had experiences of trauma that many of us are fortunate not to necessarily have experienced. And that trauma revealed itself in kind of antisocial or difficult and challenging behaviors, requiring them to be placed in a residential treatment facility. And while in that facility, as a frankly snot-nosed 19, 20-year-old who was just kind of learning his way, I felt as if there wasn't as robust or qualitatively focused an intervention for these kids that were invariably
Okay.
going to return to their communities. And so when I graduated a year later, applied to graduate school, I ended up at Lehigh University, where I pursued a master's degree in counseling psychology. And that's really where my passion began to help, in particular, in this case, kids. And obviously, the kids we were helping generally were being supported by nonprofit entities in the health and human
Okay.
service space. And then my career kind of began to take form. And I must admit, I used the word serendipity or serendipitous earlier regarding the individual who reached out just before this podcast that
Yeah.
we met in the roundtable. And serendipity certainly has intervened in my life, both personally and professionally, in many ways. And I think, paying attention to opportunities and seeing how to seize them has really been a strength of mine in advancing not only my career but my personal goals as well. So seeing that there was the opportunity to help strengthen organizations at the macro level to help support the individuals at the micro level really kind of became my calling card. And as a consequence of that, I ended up as the president and CEO of a nonprofit in the outside of the Philadelphia area in the behavioral health, juvenile justice, child welfare kind of concentric circle space.
Okay.
Um, and from there, I launched into Imperium, and great things have happened as a consequence.
Awesome. So let's dig deeper into that. Let's talk about some of the great things that happen. And so what is a result that you have helped someone in your world get that you're just incredibly proud of? And we don't have to name names of organizations or things. You can if you want. That's totally your call. But let's dig into that a little bit and talk about some results that you guys have helped be able to deliver.
Well, so I mean, I can talk about it from a very personal perspective because in 2012, when I was offered the opportunity to be the president and CEO of what was then called Edison Court, the 501(c)(3) that was doing the work with these kids in the juvenile justice, child welfare, behavioral health space, you know, I brought a board together where we actually did the organization's first strategic plan. And so
Okay.
we set our goals looking forward to figure out how to sustain and deepen the impact we were having in the communities we were working in. And at that time, the funding in our space had dramatically shifted from program funding, where you don't really need to worry about your expenses or your revenues because generally at the end of the year some benefactor was going to write you a check, whether it be the county or the state, to get you even on the year. It moved from that program funding model to a fee for service model and later to a managed care model.
Okay.
With that paradigm shift or those paradigm shifts, we really needed as an organization to bolster our business acumen. And candidly, in the health, or I'm sorry, the nonprofit space, generally the business acumen is kind of uh, is the lesser or not
Mhm.
as well attended to as some of the qualitative impacts that people are
Mhm.
looking to have. And therefore, when these funding shifts occurred, you really had to emphasize the business end of things. So in our strategic plan in 2015, my board said to me, you need to grow this business, you need to scale it. And one of the ways we wanted to scale it was through inorganic growth by going out and finding similarly sized nonprofits in our area to see if
Okay.
they would like to join with us. And
Mhm.
quite candidly, I was not successful in persuading other leaders, three or four other leaders in our area, to join because, there's some ego issues, I think, occasionally where
Okay.
who is the successor, who is the surviving entity. I don't want to be dissolved into another entity. And so when I went back to the board, I said, look, I've not been able to find any takers on this notion. So we decided it was time to put our hand in the air and look for a larger organization to partner with. And that organization ultimately was Imperium, where I met Ryan Dewey Smith in 2016. In
Okay.
August of 2016, not too far from where I sit now in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. And he shared with me this idea of affiliation, different, distinct from merger or acquisition. Affiliation, allowing the organization to retain its mission, its vision, its values, and relieving it of the rigors of the back office that had become a prominent pinch point for many smaller organizations because, as I said, they didn't grow up doing that. And
Mhm.
so I was inspired by this vision that and this notion that never had been explained to me before. I had never been introduced, and frankly, I don't think a lot of people had been introduced to it. And this was, Ryan's calling. It was his belief. It was his passion. And I was persuaded out of the gate. And Roughly 8 months later, in February of 2017, Edison Court became the third affiliate of Imperium.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing story right there. Um, and so, well, I'm trying to, because I kind of know where part of this is going to go. I'm trying to structure my questions accordingly here and stuff. And so, this has been really so interesting for me just because the more I hear you talk about what you do, the more clear of a picture I get and more clear of understanding I get of what you guys are really doing and the impact that you're having and stuff. So from where you're at right now, what's your vision for Imperium going forward right now?
Yeah, to continue to grow our footprint. So back in 2017, when Edison Corp became the third affiliate, one of the pieces of your question that I had gotten somewhat away from is the impact that it had on Edison Corp. Edison Corp was undercapitalized at the time and was not able to grow its programming. But within 3 months of affiliation, we opened up a new residential treatment facility in a new county. It was our first expansion outside of the county in which we had grown up. Were it not for the relationship with Imperium, were it not for the access to the capital that Imperium provided, we would never have been able to achieve that goal. And
Wow.
somewhat, again, serendipitously, related to some of the conversations I had with organizations about coming together to grow Edison Court, we went back to those organizations and said, take a look at this model, take a look at what we've been able to achieve. And miraculously, we were able to bring them in as affiliates because the issue of becoming homogenized or losing your independence was alleviated, and they were able to retain their mission, vision, and values. So, Youth Services Agency came in as an affiliate, Reading Specialists came in as an affiliate, and then shortly after that, the Children's Home of Reading came in as an affiliate, which at that time became one of, I think, our most uh, important and proud moments in the history of the organization because we were able to help support the Children's Home of Reading, which had 150-year history, but
Yeah.
they were on the precipice of insolvency by being able to give them a loan for $400,000 so they could make payroll and help them restructure and re-strategize. Today, they're flourishing as an organization.
Wow. And how rewarding is that? I mean, man, that's just got to make you feel amazing, you know?
It's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's when I talk about the macrocosm and the microcosm. To think of an organization that was, flagging and potentially going to go out of business, and the number of people who would have been negatively impacted by that.
Yeah.
Not only the consumers and the people that they're supporting in their services, but also the employees. So
Yep.
there's something incredibly gratifying to think that we were able to help contribute to the turnaround. It wasn't us alone. It was in conjunction and in concert with their board, with their leadership, but to help turn them
Mhm.
around and have that impact persist for the
Yes.
people that we're continuing to support uh, after their affiliation in 2018. It's an incredible story. And again, you know, having been a clinician early in my career, working with people individually and seeing them grow, seeing them change, seeing them flourish, I get kind of the same, the adrenaline rush out of seeing that happen with organizations because that's really the scale of what we've been able to achieve.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So when you joined Imperium, you said you were the third affiliate. How many affiliates does Imperium have right now?
Today, there are 34 affiliates.
Wow, that's some pretty serious growth.
It has been remarkable growth, Kevin, breakneck pace during the course of the last 9, 10 years.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's really, that's Ryan's vision, that's Ryan's passion, and he's really inculcated in that in his leadership team. We're out there looking to help support organizations wherever we can, recognizing that as we grow, particularly our back office services, our MSO is called APIS Services. As we grow that, we achieve efficiencies that are not achievable at a smaller scale. And so that becomes a significant benefit to the organizations that affiliate and become part of the constellation.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set here, and listeners have an idea about who you are and what you're all about, and I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I want to start talking about the relationship side of this whole thing. And so we'll start off by, Jay, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that that person in my experience in my life has been Ryan Dewey Smith, because without his vision, without his passion, without his innovation, I don't believe that ever would have been introduced to the notion of affiliation, nor do I believe Edison Court would have survived in the short term,
Okay.
because of the rapidly changing funding environment. And I believe that to be the case with many of our affiliates who, found themselves in somewhat desperate shape because of the difficulties they faced from a restricted funding perspective. So, and Ryan's a unique individual. His passion knows no bounds. His energy really knows no bounds. And he always is seeking solutions and opportunities and creative solutions to help support organizations and find ways through barriers that other people easily acquiesce at. He's
Yeah.
always innovating and coming up with and encouraging us and his team to come up with new solutions to the problems that we encounter on a daily basis. So, in many ways, he's an inspiration for all of us as we face the challenges that we face. But he's got a can-do attitude, and he was transformative in the meeting in 2016 and remains so today in 2026.
Yeah. So, how has he empowered you, Jay, to be able to just use your God given gifts and abilities to make your biggest impact in doing the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, he gives us all his leadership team. He gives us all the latitude we need to go out there and kind of leverage our unique skills. Like my skill sets certainly aren't in the realm of finance as our CFO's skill sets are. I think my skill sets really lie in the kind of the interpersonal, the communication, the helping see strategically the opportunities to move forward. So there's never a restriction, a regulation, or regulator around that.
Mhm.
There's always support for figuring out new opportunities and how to add to our constellation. I don't think there's a problem that Ryan has ever seen that has made him, cower or that he's run away from. He likes to take things head on. He always encourages us and brainstorms with us ways to get through those difficulties. So it's a very supportive environment and a supportive atmosphere to get out there and really promote what it is we're trying to do with that. At the end of the day, recognizing the work that we do helps the people who help the people,
Yeah.
right? So we want to relieve, as I said earlier, the rigors of the day-to-day business experience that the person with a master's degree in counseling psychology or the licensed clinical social worker or the LPC, they didn't get into this field to manage a budget or to manage or to come up with strategies about how to run a business. They got in the field to help the person that's sitting in front of them. So we want to create an opportunity to relieve those difficulties so they can focus on the person that's most important here, and that's the client, the consumer, whatever the nomenclature is in the state or the county in which you're providing your service, the person that's sitting in front of you that's in need of that help.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Let's dig a little bit deeper into this. What's an example of a situation since you've known Ryan where you personally got to make a really substantial impact, and maybe even in the moment it might have surprised you, like, wow, look what just happened there. And yet you also know that would have never been possible if not for the relationship that the two of you have.
There's a rather significant one that happened back in 2000. I guess I was 24,
Okay.
uh, where we introduced an organization that I'll not name, but it was a
Okay.
rather large organization, over $300 million in total gross revenue.
Okay.
Uh, they were operating at the time in 14 different states. They had lost $26 million over the previous 2 fiscal years. Their line of credit was maxed out at about $22 million. Their bank was calling that line of credit on May 31st, 2024, a date that in my mind will live in infamy because we are talking like March when we find out about this.
Okay.
And they were going to run out of cash. All cash forecasts indicated in early July of 2024. And at that point, as you know, Kevin, it's not hard to do the math here. When you run out of cash and you can't pay your 3,800 employees to care for the 35,000 individuals you're caring for in those different states, they don't stick around.
Yeah.
They leave, understandably. And so this became a significant dilemma. And there were many conversations. I know that that board had many conversations with many other organizations in and around the area. And the only organization that threw their hat in the ring, that put their skin in the game, as it were, at willing to make a $25 million line of credit contribution to help this organization get enough of a runway to begin to restructure the way they do things so they could sustain and be viable was Imperium. And so if it weren't for the relationship with Ryan, if it weren't for Ryan's audacity, if it weren't for Ryan's vision about how this could work, uh, this organization would cease to exist today. And that, again, as I point out, would have negatively affected 3,800 employees, negatively affected 35,000 people supported
Yeah.
by this organization,
Wow.
and
Wow.
everybody else ran for the hills. Ryan ran to the problem. And that's kind of the personality that he has. He wants to be a problem solver. He'll take that chance. And I think a lot of the other people ran for the hills because they were fearful of the contaminant effect that they may experience in their organizations because of how things were not operating well in the organization to which I'm referring. And so I think that's a mark of distinction where Ryan remains unafraid and is eager to be the person to support these businesses so that they can continue their operations. And I got to tell you, part of what we spoke about is that if this business went out, were to close its doors, there's nobody there to pick up what was the services that were being rendered. And those are services that include, community living arrangements with individuals with developmental disabilities. Those are behavioral health clinics with people who are suffering from traumatic events in their life and various mental illness that is severe and persistent mental illness that may go untreated otherwise. People who needed access to their medications that would not have had that access if this place would have closed. People who are experiencing issues with housing insecurity that otherwise would not have had a place to stay. So the ramifications are tremendous.
Yeah.
And again, many people took a look at this and ran for the hills, but
Ran for the
Ryan,
hills.
Ryan ran to the problem.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. What an inspiring story that is, and how many lives were impacted because Ryan and you chose to get involved and to help out. And we're gonna get involved in this. Yeah, no.
Yes. Yeah.
And man, that is phenomenal.
especially
Well,
at that, especially at that scale, Kevin. And one of the other pieces of that story that I think deserves to be discussed is the organization had a federally qualified healthcare center, and the governance structure that we implement in order to make the affiliation possible is not acceptable to the grantor, in this case HRSA. It's a federal grant for these federally qualified health centers. And so we had to work very assiduously to figure out a solution to that because our fear was if the health center were to shutter, there would be many marginalized, underrepresented, underserved individuals, particularly in the Philadelphia area, that would be without their health care. And that's not fair to them. That wouldn't be fair to the Philadelphia area. So we were able to broker a deal with a local healthcare center who underwrote that a new 501(c)(3), and they got them through so they could make application for the grant again. And I'm happy to report that in literally less than 7 days, next Wednesday, April 1st, they will be a new federally qualified healthcare center, and none of the services that were offered under this organization's umbrella were disrupted during the course of this process. So that's
Wow.
something I think we should be incredibly proud about,
Yeah.
and likely wouldn't have been possible without Imperium and the vision that Ryan brings to it.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I really appreciate you sharing all of that. For anyone who might be listening to this now and thinking to themselves, man, Kev, I really like Jay. I love how he shows up. I love what they're doing at Imperium. And now maybe they're thinking like, wow, you know what? I would really like to connect with those guys, or I know somebody that I might like to connect with them. What's the best way, any websites, any resources we can share with folks so people might want to follow up, Jay?
Absolutely. You can go to our website, www.imperium.org.
Okay.
There is a tab on there where you can submit your name and information that will go to our HubSpot and ultimately come to me, and I can make outreach to you there.
Okay.
People are welcome to email me at the letter J, my last name, which it's can be complicated to people, but J, Deppeler at Imperium. That's IN as in Nancy, PERIUM as in Mary.org,
Okay.
or you can seek me out on LinkedIn and set, invite, like link in with me or send me
Okay.
a note behind the scenes there. Be happy to talk to people. And I do believe, Kevin, that there are many health and human service organizations in the United States right now that are somewhat imperiled by some of the headwinds that we are facing, Medicaid dollars being reduced, CFA grants being eliminated. And one of the challenges, I think there are two challenges I often find that boards face. One I alluded to earlier, which is, boards want to win, right? They don't
Yep.
want to feel as if they've lost. They don't want to lose their identity. So we offer an opportunity for you to retain that identity. You won't lose your name, but you will benefit from the scale economies related to the breadth and scope of what we are building here at Imperium. The other is affiliation isn't concession. Affiliation isn't giving up. Affiliation is a strategy. It's a strategy to pivot, to deal with the realities of the world. Businesses on the for-profit side do this all of the time. Sadly, again, on the nonprofit side, we tend to leave our pragmatic hats at the door when we meet about what we're doing, because what we're doing tends to feel so good. We forget that it's happening in the real business world. And frankly, this has become business, and we have to think like business people. It's not an
Mhm.
anathema to think of the work that we do as business related, because at the end of the day, if you have no money, you have no mission. If you have no margin, you have no mission. And
Yeah.
our goal is to sustain missions as long and as deeply as we can through the network or through the constellation that we offer. So if people out there that are listening know of nonprofits in their community that are struggling a little bit or concerned about the future, I encourage you to give us a call, write us an email. We'd love to have that conversation.
Awesome. And I will make sure that we include those links that you shared with the show notes for this podcast. So it'll be nice and easy for anybody there.
Thank
And
you.
um, Jay, is there any last thing that you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Look, I'm just very proud of what we've been able to accomplish over the last 9 years, and I
Yeah.
do believe that we're going to, deepen our impact and our size and our influence over the forthcoming 9 years. I will put a little tickler or teaser out there, perhaps cliffhanger. We do have another large organization coming online, hopefully before the end of April.
Okay.
150 million, roughly $150 million behavioral health organization that's going to be joining our network. Obviously can't reveal that. We're just waiting for the regulatory approval to go ahead and conclude that transaction. So our momentum remains robust. I think our opportunities remain robust, and we're honored to be able to help uh, support these organizations so they can continue to do the great work that they're doing in the communities they support.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Congratulations on that. Well, Jay, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited to get this out there and share it with some of the right kind of folks. So thanks so much, Jay.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Yes.